Hello, Mike Hako, and mahalo for joining today's Monday, February 7th, 2022, 1 p.m. AEN committee hearing in committee room conference room 224 and also video conferencing, which includes the audio and video of remote participants that's being streamed live on YouTube. You'll find links to the viewing options for all the Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the Leg's website at capitol.hawaii.gov. And in the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to major technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business at 1:01 p.m. on Wednesday, February 9th, during our AEN video conference time slot, and a public notice will be posted on the Leg's website. For testifiers, all testifier audio will be muted and video disabled until shortly before it's your turn to testify. And because of our 90-minute time limit for each of the AEN hearings, there'll be a 2-minute time limit for all testifiers. And we'll have a virtual countdown timer on the Zoom screen, so please be aware of the timer. I'll be announcing only the testifiers who will be providing testimony via Zoom. And for the complete list of testifiers, along with all of the written testimony, please go to the legislature's website, and you'll find a link on the status page for the measure. And we apologize if the closed captioning does not accurately transcribe the names. Okay, let's see. We'll get started. First measure up is SB 2909, relating to plant quarantine facilities. The purpose of this act is to provide a certification process for privately owned and operated plant quarantine facilities. Okay, let's see. Testifiers. First up. Okay, hang on here. 2909. We don't have any testifiers on this one. Okay, let's move on to 2908. This measure is appropriates general revenues to expand the state-run quarantine facilities under the jurisdiction of the Department of Agriculture's Plant Quarantine Branch. All right. And 2908, first up is Phyllis Shimabukuro-Geyser from Department of Ag.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Phyllis Shimabukuro-Geyser, Chairperson of the Department of Agriculture. We stand on our written testimony supporting the bill and offering comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next up is Brian Miyamoto from the Hawai'i Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Nishiyama, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawai'i Farm Bureau. We'll stand on a written testimony in support. Chair, I'd just like to note also my apologies. We did submit testimony for the previous bill, SB 2909 also, and we'd like to actually stand in support of our testimony for that measure also. My apologies, Chair.
No problem. Thank you, Brian. Next is Chris Manfredi from the Hawaii Coffee Association.
Aloha, Chair.
Aloha, Chris.
Gabbard, Vice Chair Nihara, members of the committee. Chris Manfredi, testifying in strong support of SB 2908. Our long-term strategy toward managing coffee leaf rust is to import restoration varietals from other parts of the world safely and quickly. As we've been in discussions since the onset of this with Department of Ag, USDA, University, and others, it became abundantly clear that the state quarantine facilities are not up to the task. So we're looking for investment both on the public side, represented by this bill, SB 2908, and also the previous bill that we submitted testimony on, which would allow for a pathway to enable private investment in private quarantine facilities. We support both measures strongly. These are our top priorities for this session, and we appreciate your support. Thank you so much, and we're here to answer your questions. Aloha.
Chair, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Hello.
Um,
Am I back on? Okay. Relating to farmer equity establishes provisions within the Department of Ag to enhance farmer equity by ensuring inclusion of socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers in the development, implementation, and enforcement of food and agriculture laws, rules, policies, and programs. Okay, let's see here.
Chair Gabbard.
Yes.
So my apology, my audio wasn't working, so I was trying to interrupt you on Senate Bill 2909. I actually have many questions for Department of Ag and other folks on that particular measure, and you mentioned that no one was signed up to testify, but it's a really important measure.
On our first measure.
2909.
Okay. Is there someone you wanted to direct your questions to?
Yes, Department of Ag.
Okay. Phyllis, Department of Ag, please. We're back on 2909.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator Ocasio, for your question. Chair, I apologize. We thought that our testimony was submitted on time. We'll resend our testimony. We support the intent of the bill, and we offered comments.
Okay. And Senator Ocasio had a question for you.
So, yes, thank you, Chair Shimabukuro-Geiser. So you had mentioned in your testimony that there would be there's inherent risk, higher risk for bringing in pests from private facilities. Can you expand on that?
Yes, I'd like to allow you to call forth Dr. Helmuth Rogg, who is our administrator for plant industry. And Dr. Rogg can answer your question.
Yes, Dr. Rogg, thank you. Because I noticed that it mentioned that importing, with APHIS from the Department of Agriculture on the federal side, that it's not legal to import directly to Hawaii coffee plants, and that there is an inherent risk in directly importing these plants because of if they went to California, they would be tissue cultured first in a sterile environment and brought over clean. So could you please expand on your inherently higher risk for bringing in more pests when it comes to private importation?
Chair Gabbard, Senator Ocasio, for the records, I'm Helmut Rogg. I'm the plant industry administrator with the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. And thank you for the question. Yes, we've worked since I'm here since September. We've worked with the coffee industry. I hope you can hear me. I hear some feedback. We've worked with our coffee industry and our researchers here to figure out a way to safely import new varieties that are potentially resistant against the coffee leaf rust disease that we have here now in Hawaii. And we identified a potential way to get that in. This is called National Clean Plant Network. Is a system in place in the continental US and also here in Hawaii. Dr. Meltzer with UH is the Clean Plant Network here in Hawaii. And we can import resistant varieties from overseas to the continental US, get them through a laboratory there for testing, make sure they are clean of diseases and insects, and then propagate them. And that's where we're still working on how long do they have to be in California. And you see my air quotes, to become naturalized. before they're allowed by the federal government from California into Hawaii. That's currently, we're working still on that. But the point is, and our objective is to bring in clean resistant varieties as fast as possible. If we can do it this way, to do sort of the offshore testing, we can very likely do compliance agreement here and waive the 1-year quarantine requirements that we have here for material coming into Hawaii. I hope that, sorry for the long answer.
No, that's good. And also, just for clarification, Dr. Rogg, are green coffee beans, the importation also underneath this APHIS requirement to not come directly to Hawaii? And if so, can you please explain to me how green coffee is currently being imported?
So Chair Gabbard and Senator Ocasio, I can't answer that question because that's a federal requirement, and I would refer here to my counterpart, the State Plant Health Director, Vernon. He can probably better answer that question, how that works on the federal side.
That would be great. It's available. Chair.
Excuse me, Senator Ocasio.
Yes.
You know, I think your question regarding how green coffee is safely imported into the state, I think Jonathan Ho might be able to explain that. He's allowed to answer that question.
Chair Gabbard, is that okay?
That's fine.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, members of the committee, Senator Ocasio. So for green coffee, it's the department's understanding that as long as it's coming in treated and it's not being used at coffee facilities, it's being allowed under state permit.
And also, is there risk of, so there's, in Department of Agriculture's testimony, it says there's a more inherent risk of importation of pests via the plant materials if it's not quarantined in California. Is there also a risk, the same risk of importing pests via the green coffee directly from those places? It's my understanding under APHIS that it's actually not legal to import it directly. And so it goes through California, but in the same way. But could you clarify on the process of which green coffee is being currently imported?
Yeah, so it's going to the continental United States, and it's being subjected to methylbromide treatment before entry, and then inspected upon entry here. By
Department of Ag, or by the
by the plant quarantine branch, Department of Ag. It's being inspected upon entry. We have not found pests contained in shipments that have been subjected to the treatment so far. So seems to be working at this point.
Thank you. And then as far as maybe Chair Shimabukuro-Garza, I'm not sure if this is for you or for others in the Department of Ag, but it should be my last question is that we recognize that a lot of this new move in order to privatize and allow for more importation of other varieties. It's my understanding from many farmers coffee farmers in Kona that I've spoken to, is that they do not want to import these varieties necessarily. And there may be others that do, I understand. But the importation, let's see, that part of the rationale for importing these different varieties is that they're considered rust resistant. And is there proof and evidence that you have that you can share that they are rust resistant? Because there are other conflicting evidence that is showing that they're no longer rust resistant.
Well, thank you very much for that question, Senator. I will defer to Dr. Rogg. Helmuth, can you answer the senator's question about the resistant strains.
So yes, Chair Gabbard, Senator Ocasio, Helmut Rogg. So I'm not a plant pathologist, and we have lots of good scientists here in Hawaii that can probably answer that question in a better way. What we're trying to do is we're trying to find resistant varieties against the coffee leaf rust. There's lots of screening going on in coffee producing countries like Costa Rica, Colombia, where we would have sources of potentially resistant varieties that we could test and bring in. And that's the idea with the National Clean Plant Network approach, that we have the industry select varieties that are adequate for the industry's conditions and criteria. We can test them in these laboratories that are accredited for the resistance to coffee leaf rust and other diseases, and then bring them in here to Hawaii. The whole point, I mean, everybody probably agrees that we want to bring in as clean as a possible material so we don't have more pests. I mean, we got the two worst ones at the moment, but there's still lots of other pests out there that potentially could come if we bring in plants and not screen them prior to importation.
Okay, so also, are you saying then that because I'm reading this in Department of Ag's testimony, that bringing in, so the clean method goes through the process through a continental US location, but privately owned and operated plant quarantine facilities here in Hawaii, that would be a direct importation, and therefore it increases the risk of allowing more pests to come in?
Chair Gabbard, Senator Ocasio, so if it comes from overseas, this is under federal import permit and not allowed. If we bring directly in from overseas varieties to Hawaii. If we go through a network in the continental US, we would have to figure out what the federal government's criterion is for naturalization, how long that plant has to be in California to become naturalized, and then it's a national, interstate movement that we control. If that's the case, it still has to be then, if we don't know the whole background of the plant, it has to go through 1-year quarantine at least here for us with the Department of Agriculture, even if it's on private or our own facilities.
So then it seems like it would be safer in terms of not importing more pests to have Department of Agriculture maintain and have stronger and more ability to control these rather than move to private facilities that are directly importing.
Chair Gabbard, Senator Ocasio, yes, there's of course a time crunch because we are losing a lot of plants very likely to the pest. So we need to replace varieties here with resistant varieties quickly. But then we're also talking about quantity. We're talking about very likely millions of plants that have to be replaced in a very short time, not to lose our coffee industry here. So that's where we have some limitations, and we have to address those limitations.
Okay, so I understand the limitations, and yet if we're jeopardizing the rest of our ag industry or even future pests for coffee for that time, we have to take into really strong consideration whether or not this expedited process will actually bring more pests from South and Central America. Correct?
Chair Gabbard, Senator Ocasio, so if we use the Clean Plant Network approach, this is as clean as it can get. So the National Clean Plant Network has been working with grapes, with citrus, with fruit trees, and what they're doing is basically making sure the stock material is absolutely clean from pests and diseases and then it gets passed on to nurseries or the states that multiply and propagate this clean material. So that's our approach. I mean, it's nothing is 100% opposite,
Right.
but this is
But-
the best method that we have currently in the country.
The clarification I'm trying to get from you is if this clean plant approach, this clean plant network has to be done through Department of Ag rather than through these private direct importing. That's the clarification I'm trying to understand.
Chair Gabbard, Senator Ocasio, we are working currently collaboratively with the industry and our research folks here in Hawaii, and also with California Department of Agriculture and the county over there to identify the labs over there. This is basically our entire group is involved in that process. We have that pilot study going on right now, and there's no restriction. It doesn't have to be just us making the contact. We're the conduit for that group to connect with other Department of Agriculture in other states and find the possibility of identifying a lab that is accredited and could do the job.
Okay,
Sarah, I yield.
thank you. And I apologize, I did, there were a few testifiers on SB 2909, and since we're on 2909, if Phyllis Geiser, Fred Cowell, Chris Manfredi, or Brian Miyamoto would like to weigh in on this, now would be a good time to do it. Anyone?
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony, supports the intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Chris?
Aloha again, Chair. Chris Manfredi, in support for Hawaii Coffee Association. You know, for us, the response to this disease is all hands on deck. We know that the state's quarantine facilities are not up to the task. We know that funding those facilities and improving them is a long-term prospect. The private sector could respond a lot quicker to this if the department was able to, or permitted to, establish a set of standards, so that a set of design standards of what a private quarantine facility would look like, and then move towards approving plans for those private facilities so that we can start to get these rust-resistant varieties into the hands of growers. I want to point out, as it goes to the question raised earlier by Senator about farmers not wanting these. There may be some farmers that don't want rust-resistant varieties. The overwhelming majority of farmers that we talk to want these rust-resistant varieties. We're told from other coffee-producing countries that have responded to leaf rust that it's very important to have rust-resistant plant material. I also want to point out that there's a myriad of different varietals growing in Hawaii, including Kona. We host a cupping competition every year, and some of our top scoring coffees are not Kona typica. So what we're looking for is the ability for private industry to be able to meet this challenge in a safe way. We are in constant communication with Department of Ag, with Chair Shimabukuro Geyser and Mr. or Dr. Rog. Super helpful, super responsive.
Thank you, Chris. Sorry, Chris, I got to cut you off.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Fred Cowell from the Kauai Coffee Company, is he in the house? And then,
Present, Chair.
okay, Brian Miyamoto.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Out of respect for time, Chair, we'll stand on a written testimony in support. We do hear concerns about safety, and that's why we are supporting this, that it has to be certified, and the oversight will be from the Department of Agriculture, like the state-owned facilities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, members, any other questions? We shall move back to SB 1416, which we started on farmer equity. And let's see here. We don't have any approved testifiers. So we'll move on to SB 1316. And this one establishes an agriculture production tax credit that includes agricultural producers who produce at least 50% of food crops for local consumption. First up is Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser, Department of Ag.
It's written test support, and we defer to the Department of Taxation. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Isaac Choi, DOT, or actually Department of Taxation. DOTAX, sorry.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Josh Michaels on behalf of the Director of Tax. We'll stand on our written testimony offering comments, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next is Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jade Mcmillan. I'm testifying on behalf of Tom Yamachika and the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We have submitted comments on the measure. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jade. Next is Micah Munakata from Ulupono Initiative.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Nishihara, and members of the committee. Micah Munakata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We'll stand on our testimony in support of this measure. Just a couple of recommendations around some of the definitions and this in regard to qualified expense and qualified taxpayer. Around for any questions if you might have any. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Brian Miyamoto from the Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll stand on our written testimony in support.
Okay, members, any questions? Okay. Moving on to SB 1277, establishes the Environmental Justice Mapping Task Force and an advisory council to develop high-quality data relating to environmental justice concerns, identify environmental justice communities, and devise a method to correct for racist and unjust practices leading to historical and current environmental injustices. We do not have any testifiers on this measure. So we'll move on to SB 1030. And this measure removes the statutory requirement for representatives of the pineapple and sugar industries and adds the statutory requirement for representatives of the coffee and diversified agriculture industries onto the Advisory Committee on Pesticides. First up is Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser, Department of Ag.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department stands in strong support and we're available for questions.
Thank you very much. That's our only testifier. Members, any questions? Okay, Senator.
I have a question for Chair Shimabukuro Geyser. In relationship, I know there's a few of these, there's a few bills that address the removal of both sugar and pineapple off of the committee, and I understand why that is so. But wondering if you could give some feedback as to perhaps the need to put on a public health industry professional thing that is, related to, public health and someone to be on that committee that could speak to that end from the perspective of maybe being a physician or involved in that public health side of pesticides. Or I know that on this particular one, it mentions, let's see, Farm Bureau, Farm Bureau, and then the additional person on top of this particular measure refers to diversified agriculture, and it seems to be that those are the same, perhaps, topic. Could you give some clarification to that?
Thank you for your question, Senator. Regarding a representative to address public health and safety issues, we do have a representative for public health, which is with personnel from Department of Health. So Department of Health has a seat on our advisory committee, and that representative addresses the public health issues. As far as the diversified agriculture seat, you know, when this advisory committee was established many years ago, at that time, I guess the intent was that Hawaii Farm Bureau did represent diversified agriculture. In our bill, we decided to just go with a diversified agricultural representative, because that would open it up to anyone who has the proficiency and the knowledge of the use of pesticides that is involved in the diversified agricultural community or industry. And the reason for us having a coffee representative is since October 2020, the coffee industry has gone through so much, whether it was working with the department to get an emergency exemption with Governor Ige's support for organic growers to not lose their certification, to use pesticides for coffee leaf rust, whether to go and get EPA to grant the state an exemption. You know, the industry has gone through so much dealing with federal and state pesticide requirements that in such a short period of time. So that's why we thought that industry would be a good party to advise and assist the department and the board.
So there's nobody on here specifically that represents either organic style of farming, natural farming, Korean natural farming, and also, for example, integrated pest management specialist from UH-CTAR. For example, would you folks consider somebody on that represents, you know, an approach to integrated pest management that is not necessarily from the perspective of, you know, fossil fuel and heavy chemical laden approaches?
The University of Hawaii does have a seat on our advisory committee. The University Hawaii CTAR is very involved in integrated pest management, biocontrol. They're very good partners with us regarding invasive pests. And also CTAR also has a strong organic extension service and research, which the department has supported through, you know, special funds in the past. So the diversified seat could be someone knowledgeable in organic production, in addition to the university. And I believe Hawaii Farm Bureau does have organic farmers that are members of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. So there are multiple seats that could have that, you know, that person could have that proficiency in organic production and the coffee industry, as I previously stated too.
Thank you. Ayocha.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to SB 1025, authorizes the Department of Ag to plan, design, construct, operate, manage, maintain, repair, demolish, and remove infrastructure on any lands under the jurisdiction of the department to support and promote agriculture, establishes the Agricultural Enterprise Program, establishes the Agricultural Enterprise Special Fund, and requires the Board of Ag to annually report on accounting of non-ag park lessees to the legislature. Okay, let's see here. On this one, first up is Phyllis Shimabukuro-Geiser, Department of Ag.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department stands on its written testimony and strong support. Mahalo.
Thank you, Phyllis. Micah Munakata from Ulupono.
Afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ulupono stands on its testimony in strong support of this measure. Just one brief comment. You know, the DOA does a great job at managing lands when it comes to production, and they also take on the task of dealing with post-harvest processing as well. A lot of these lands seem to fall between the cracks, and I think a program like this is long overdue to really support the department in moving forward. So really appreciate your leadership, Chair, and this committee moving this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Micah. Next is Brian Miyamoto from Hawai'i Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawai'i Farm Bureau. I can't say better than the previous speaker said. We appreciate you hearing this bill, Chair. We know you've had it before your committee for the past several years. We're hopeful that this is the year. We believe something like this can really help to move our ag industry forward on Department of Agriculture land. So we do stand in strong support, and we do ask you and your committee to pass this bill to support our farmers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Next, Kendall Matsuyoshi from the Local Food Coalition.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Nishihara, and members of the committee. Kendall Matsuyoshi testifying on behalf of the Local Food Coalition. We'll stand on our written testimony in strong support of the measure, echoing the sentiments of the previous two testifiers. Thank you.
Mahalo, Kendall. Members, are there any questions on this measure? Okay, moving on to SB 1315. Establishes a food manufacturer tax credit, defines qualified taxpayers as manufacturers that produce value-added products using local crops. Okay, first up is Janine Udui from the Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Nishihara, and members of the committee. I am Janine Udui, Deputy Attorney General, testifying on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General today. The department has concerns that this bill may be challenged for violating the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution, as states may not pass regulatory measures to benefit an in-state economic interest by burdening out-of-state competitors. This bill allows persons engaged in the production of value-added products to qualify for a tax credit if their products are made exclusively with crops grown in Hawaii. The same tax credit would not be made available to food producers selling products made with crops grown out of state. It therefore would give a direct commercial advantage to locally produced food products, as the tax credit incentivizes the purchase and use of crops grown in Hawaii over those that are not. To remedy this situation, the department recommends removing the requirement in this bill that the tax credit be limited to producers of value-added products using only local crops. As stated in our written testimony, we understand that this may defeat the purpose of the bill. However, note that an alternative means of promoting the local agricultural industry is to offer tax incentives to anyone, resident or non-resident, that engages in farming or food production activities. Thank you for allowing the department the opportunity to comment. I will be available for questions.
Thank you, Janine. Next is Phyllis Shimabukuro-Geiser, Department of Ag.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair, members of the committee, we stand on our written testimony in support, and we defer to the Department of Taxation.
Next up, Isaac Choi from the Department of Taxation.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members. The department will stand on its testimony offering comments, and I'm available for any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Mahalo. Brian Miyamoto, Hawai'i Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, Brian Miyamoto on behalf of the Hawai'i Farm Bureau. We'll stand on our written testimony in support with just a few comments. Again, Chair, we appreciate your efforts. This will help our farmers directly and indirectly by providing another market for some of their off grades or their overage. It will even help farmers that are very integrated and are doing value added on their farms. We did hear the Attorney General's concerns, but again, as a policy, we want to support our local farmers and ranchers and at least provide them some additional income to help grow their operations. So we do stand in strong support. We appreciate the attention given to the value-added food producers that do utilize locally grown and produced agricultural products. Thank you, Chair.
Mahalo, Brian. Next is Jade Mcmillan from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Good afternoon. Again, Jade Mcmillan on behalf of Tom Yamashika and the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We have offered comments on the measure. Again, we have noted the same concerns with the Constitution's Commerce Clause as noted by the Department of the Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the Hawaii Food Manufacturers Association. Any representatives?
Not present, Chair.
Thank you. Micah Munekata, Ulupono Initiative.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Micah Munikanta here on behalf of Ulupono. We'll stand on our testimony in support of this measure. Again, we have some potential language that may help. I know that this is definitely a bill that is of interest for the ag community, and especially supporting those that are seeking to diversify their operations and really utilize all of their crops, whether it be first or seconds. I think that this type of measure does start to move the needle when it comes towards ag innovation and even technology. So really appreciate this committee and share your leadership to hear this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions, members? Okay, moving on to SB 2798. This measure authorizes the board to grant temporary courtesy and relief permits for out-of-state veterinarians. Permits licensed veterinarians to practice veterinarian telemedicine, allows for international veterinary school graduates to qualify for the licensure examination. First up is Department of Ag. Phyllis.
Testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Carrie Shahan from the Hawaii Board of Veterinary Medicine.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard and members of the committee. My name is Carrie Shahan, and I'm the Executive Officer of the Hawaii Board of Veterinary Medicine. The board stands on its written testimony in support of the intent of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Next is Stephanie Kendrick with the Hawaiian Humane Society.
Aloha, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Nishihara, and committee members. Stephanie Kendrick with the Hawaiian Humane Society. You have our written testimony in enthusiastic, robust, perhaps even slightly desperate support of this measure. To put a fine point on it, we need this. Our animal welfare groups need this, our local veterinarians need this, and our animals certainly need this. There is an acute nationwide shortage of veterinarians. With its high cost of living, attracting professionals to move to Hawaii is particularly challenging, and visiting veterinarians have been an important lifeline both for nonprofit and for-profit clinics. Just as a couple of examples, it took Hawaiian Humane nearly 10 months to fill its most recent opening for a veterinarian, and in that time, another opening has occurred. It took a year to hire each of the previous 2 veterinarians who joined our team. Our animal welfare colleagues on the neighbor islands have similar stories. The staff shortages are constant. I'll let HVMA and the private clinics speak to the shortages in their areas, but as a pet owner, I can tell you that our local clinics are overwhelmed. It can take months to get appointments, particularly with specialists. This measure is the result of a collaboration between the Hawaii Veterinary Medical Board, the Hawaii Veterinary Medical Association, ourselves, and the Veterinary Emergency and Referral Center of Hawaii. It is a carefully considered measure which will protect animals, serve the interests of consumers, and support access to high quality veterinary care in our state. I urge the committee to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steph. Next is Jill Yoshisido with the Hawaii Veterinary Medical Association.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Nishihara, and members of the committee. My name is Jill Yoshisedo, and I am a local veterinarian and Executive Vice President of the Hawaii Veterinary Medical Association. The HVMA stands on its written testimony in support of this bill We did want to acknowledge that the specific language regarding temporary permits in SB 2798 was developed by the Hawaii State Board of Veterinary Medicine. We also have 4 clarifying amendment requests stated in our written testimony, and I would be happy to answer any questions on these amendments or any aspects of this bill. Thank you for your consideration.
Mahalo, Jill. Next is Erica Sox Burns with the Veterinary Emergency and Referral Center.
Hi, my name is Erica Burns. Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, and Committee. Thank you for having us here today. I stand on my written testimony. I'm a practicing veterinarian, a specialist in small animal internal medicine. I've been in Hawaii for 11 years now, and am largely responsible for recruiting and filling vacancies in roles at our hospital, which is a 24-hour emergency and referral hospital. And I think Stephanie has done a great job of explaining the predicament that we're in. I will add that when I'm advertising for a specialist to fill a vacant role, it can take me years to fill it. So if, and it has indeed, and then you fill it and you get another opening. So this is something that we really need in order to continue to provide the standard of care that we want to be able to have available for our own pets and for everyone else's pets here. I stand by my written testimony, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Erica. Members, any questions? Okay, moving on to SB 2675, establishes a cover crop reimbursement pilot program manager position within the Department of Ag to administer the program. And let's see here. First up is Phyllis Geyser, Department of Ag.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony supporting the intent of the bill. Available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next is Nicholas Comerford from CTAR.
Not present, Chair.
Next is Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on testimony in support.
Okay, members, are there any questions? Okay, let's see. Moving on to SB 2673. This measure enhances farmer equity by ensuring inclusion of socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers in the development, implementation, and enforcement of food and agricultural laws, rule, policies, and programs. We do not have any testifiers on this measure. And then moving on to our last measure, SB 2537. And this one is relating to capital investments, amends the definition of capital investment cost to include the planting of trees having an expected lifespan of at least 15 years. And first up is Winston Welch from the Outdoor Circle.
Yes, Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. We stand on our submitted testimony in strong support of Bill 2537 that does include an amendment adding capital investment costs to include the planting of trees. This has been an overlooked area that we really need to have so that we can recognize our essential infrastructure, our green infrastructure on projects throughout the state. Thank you very much for your consideration of this bill.
Thank you, Winston. Members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, let's see, who's our IT person? Austin, if we could go to the breakout room for some discussion. Hello, Mike Kako. We are reconvening the 1 o'clock AEN hearing for some decision making. Having conferred with my members, SB 2909 relating to plant quarantine facilities. The chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure as is. And Senator Ocasio?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I'll be voting with reservations. I just would like to note for the committee report, making sure to specify that, just noting Department of Ag's concern about inherently higher risk for bringing in more pests in this methodology, if not very carefully controlled. And also that, it was noted in some of the testimony that, these for-profit private entities may not be the best vehicle for this kind of thing, and that actually we should be investing in Department of Ag to be able to do what they're already mandated to do. And then we can support them to do it better. But thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ocasio. Okay. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara for the vote.
No. Senator Ocasio, reservation. Senator Rhodes,
reservations.
Senator Favela,
reservations.
Okay, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to SB 2908 relating to the plant quarantine branch. Recommendation will be to pass as is. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair.
Of the members present, any voting with reservations or
reservation?
Okay, thank you. All others voting aye.
Thank you.
Motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 1416 on farmer equity. Let's see. Chair's recommendation will be to pass as is. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair.
The members present, any voting in opposition or reservations? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 1316 related to the ag production tax credit. Let's see here. Chair's recommendation is pass as is. Chair votes aye. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
With the members present, any voting with opposition or with reservations? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 1277. Wait a minute. Is that right? Sorry, Clarence, I lost my place in my.
1277.
Are we on 1277?
77, yes.
We're on 1277. All right, the environmental justice one. Yes, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Chair votes aye. Any discussion?
The members present, any voting in opposition or reservation? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Okay.
10:30.
Gotcha. Moving on to SB 1030 relating to the Advisory Committee on Pesticides. The chair's recommendation will be to pass as is. Any discussion? Vice Chair. Chair.
The members present, any voting in reservations or opposition?
Reservation. Ocasio with reservation.
Okay.
Noting the composition, the specific composition of the advisory committee members.
Okay, all others in voting aye. Motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 1025 relating to agricultural enterprise program. The chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
The members present, any voting in opposition or reservation? Seeing none. Senator Ocasio?
Yes, reservation.
Okay, thank you. Motion is adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 1315, related to the food manufacturer tax credit. Chair's recommendation will be to pass as is. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Okay, of the members present, any voting in opposition with reservation? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 2798, relating to veterinary medicine. The chair's recommendation be to pass as is. Any discussion? Vice Chair?
As the members present, any voting in opposition or with reservation? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 2675, related to cover crops. The chair's recommendation will be to pass as is. Chair votes aye. Any discussion? Senator?
Any members present voting in opposition or with reservation? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. Next is SB 2673, related to farmer equity. And on this one, members, since we already have SB 1416, we'll use that as the vehicle and we'll defer this measure indefinitely. And then moving on to SB 2537, relating to capital improvements. The chair's recommendation will be to pass as is. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Okay, of the members present, any voting with opposition or with reservation? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Okay, and then members, we had some decision-making on 4 measures that we deferred from last week. Starting with SB 2973, relating to hemp production. Extends regulatory authority of the Department of Ag over hemp production until June 30th, 2024. Members, on this one, there's still discussion going on. I know that the hemp farmers are opposed to this. They feel like there's over-regulation since they're dealing with the feds in terms of, since we switched over to the feds granting licenses, et cetera. So what I'd like to do on this one is to add a defective date of January 1st, 2050 and pass it on so that we can continue the discussion with the Department of Ag and other stakeholders. So any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Of the members present, any voting with opposition or with reservation? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 301, relating to sunscreens. Okay, the chair's recommendation will be to pass with amendments. Members, with the beginning of the bill, it would read Section 1, Section 342D-21, Hawaii Revised Statutes. It's amended to read as follows. 342D-21, sale and distribution of sunscreen containing oxybenzone or octinoxate or both, prohibition, active ingredients generally recognized as safe and effective. A, beginning January 1st, 2021, it shall be unlawful to sell, offer for sale, or distribute for sale in the state any sunscreen that contains oxybenzone or octinoxate or both. Next, beginning January 1st, 2023, it also shall be unlawful to sell, offer for sale, or distribute for sale in the state any sunscreen that contains active ingredients that are not generally recognized as safe and effective by the United States Food and Drug Administration without a prescription issued by a licensed healthcare provider. The definitions of oxybenzone and octinoxate stricken in the bill from the existing law, page 2, line 6, through page 3, line 5, also should be restored. This would restore all of the oxybenzone and octinoxate ban law language that this bill struck pages 1, lines 4 to 6, and 8, page 2, lines 6 through 21, page 3, lines 1 to 5. And so that the GRAS, the generally recognized as safe and effective ban, it supplements rather than supplants the oxybenzone octinoxate ban law to restore, not strike, the definitions of oxybenzone and octinoxate. Okay, so Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. We'll defect the date till January 1st, 2050. Any discussion? Chair votes aye.
The members present, any voting with opposition or with reservation? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. And then SB 3197, establishing a farmer apprentice mentoring program. Members, on this one, the chair's recommendation would be to pass with amendments, generally from the 2020 bill on SB 2709, and then defect the date to January 1st, 2050 for continuing discussions with the Department of Ag. Any questions? Chair's recommendation is to vote aye with amendments.
Of the members present, any voting with opposition or reservations? Seeing none, motion's adopted.
Thank you, members. And then finally, SB 2068 relating to land management. The chair's recommendation on this one will be to, excuse me, will be to pass SB 2068 with amendments. Members, this measure seeks to address the ag community's longstanding concerns for ensuring that suitable ag lands are transferred from DLNR to the Department of Ag in a timely manner pursuant to Act 90. I wanted to mention that I appreciate and mahalo all the members and the participants of the Act 90 working group for their relentless efforts to improve the existing process and address the concerns of all the parties involved. And I'm also aware that this measure may not fully satisfy the desires and needs of everyone involved. But I believe, however, that it does offer a promising and a viable path forward to attain the goal of achieving a reasonable balance between the state's equally important priorities of agriculture, conservation, and cultural preservation. And as you well know, as the chair of the Agriculture Environment Committee, you can see the position I'm in place with in dealing with this particular bill. But anyway, so what I'd like to do is to move the bill forward for further discussion and to defect the date until January 1st, 2050. So the chair will be voting aye. Any discussion?
The members present, any voting with reservations or in opposition? Okay, thank you.
Me too, reservations.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Okay. And Vice Chair goes aye. Motion is adopted.
Okay, members, thank you very much. This concludes the 1 o'clock and the 1:30 hearings for AEN. Mahalo.